much, Sean. So what does GIO do to participate in the cyber ranges? Basically, we set the scene. Hopefully, we make things a little bit exciting at the beginning of a cyber range exercise, so you know why you're actually exercising against this topic. So for instance, with ransomware, as I'll go through the slides here in a bit, we do actually talk about what is the threat of ransomware, not just in general terms, but what does it mean for the finance sector? And you can see the impact it's had, different types of high-level overview of its TTPs, things like that. So what we've tried to do here is really kind of go beyond Intel for Intel people, and instead try to use the Intel to help your red teams, your penetration testers, and of course, the rest of your blue team to understand how to combat a ransomware threat or other threats, as Sean had mentioned as well. So next slide, please. So what is the purpose? We set the tone. Why is this bad? And, that's the general purpose of trying to address this type of brief. We do it in about 10 minutes or so, just to give you the overview of it. Of course, if you do want to know more about the threats themselves, we do have a variety of products. We have the operational level alerts that come out every single day. We do actually bi-weekly trends report as well, especially on things like ransomware, how often it's getting reported by the membership. And we do some deep dive reports as well, technical analysis reports, intelligence spotlight reports on actual incidents, and things like that. But for the cyber range briefs, we want to give you that taster, that understanding of why are you actually looking at this problem. Ransomware, it's been all over the news, and that's one of the reasons why it's a popular cyber range exercise, of course. For the Intel team, it's also fairly pervasive, so it gives us a lot of data points to work from as well. But as Sean mentioned, there's also other topics that we provide information on. Business email compromise, for once. If you do look at statistics coming out of either IC3 or even in cyber insurers, they will talk about how, in terms of money, business email compromise actually causes the most impact over ransomware. But of course, ransomware gets the news. It is highly disruptive. It's now under government scrutiny as well around the world, not just in the US. There's also the cloud leak side of things. So we'll talk about, we'll set the scene in terms of different threats or incidents that we've seen in terms of bad guys going after cloud environments. Or of course now, especially in the pandemic, everybody's on the cloud these days. And so the exposure rate is quite fast. And then of course, the new one is the Trojans and lateral movement, which again, we do have quite a bit of information. Those of you who might not know, phishing is actually still #1 of how the bad guys get the malware into your systems. And it's actually still #1 of how much information members do report to ISAC as well. So we have lots of IOCs that you can use in your SIM to push through your STIX taxi feed or your MISP now, because we do allow MISP interchanges now. So next slide, please. So this goes into a little bit of how we set the stage. So we'll give you a little bit of a one-on-one about what the threat is. Of course, with ransomware, we want to convey to you that it's not all the same. Just because you pick up a newspaper or pick up the latest blog, depending on what generation you're in, maybe, you see ransomware and it seems ubiquitous. It seems, it doesn't actually break it down for you. When you're looking at the actual technical side of things, what malware you're facing, what ransomware you're facing actually could change your playbook even, whether or not you're talking about the more simpler ones that are looking just for encryption, or the now more complicated ones that are looking to actually destroy your reputation and even put you at risk for data breaches and having to file different types of credit bureau type of reports for your customers because their PII has been dumped on a site for them. So it is very, very important to understand what the risk is from the specific type of ransomware you are seeing. And being able to understand that from a threat intelligence perspective is also to understand what the bad guys are wanting. Is it just financial motivation, or are they kind of targeting you for a purpose as well? And as you can see from the the graphic on the right-hand side, we'll also try to put in things about how bad is it. This is actually from one of our cyber insurers members, that they actually publicly released information about cyber claims on ransomware, and of course other things as well. And so you can see actually that it is quite high. And of course, in 2021, 2020, as you can imagine, it's been even higher. But of course, for a company that gets targeted by ransomware, it can lead to data integrity and data confidentiality issues. Next slide. There we go. And then we'll try to break it down into what FS ISAC members are seeing. So specifically what's being reported. In something like ransomware or even business email compromise, we might rely on a couple of different sources. For ransomware, for instance, we do make use of open source reporting like the Temple University ransomware tracker, but also we use the member reported data as well. So the graphic you see in front of you is actually from your fellow members, maybe your own operational teams letting us know that there has been some level of targeting of ransomware to your companies. This could be mostly in terms of phishing. We see that a lot where phishing emails get put in. Sometimes it's not a direct link to the ransomware itself, but certain types of kits that will open up and then lead you eventually to the ransomware. We have seen these types of compound attacks in the past, for instance, which is why sometimes when we do report ransomware, it'll actually be in association with an exploit kit or maybe even a banking Trojan like TrickBot or something like Zloader. And we talk about how that actually leads to the targeting. Now, as you can see, all these multiple colors means that there's a lot of different variants out there. And we do consistently see that from the membership. It's actually hardly ever like one type of ransomware that gets reported. It is a variety of ransomwares. And that goes back to that previous slide of you need to know what the ransomware is doing, because not all ransomware is the same, and it might not affect your company the same way as well. And what we saw, especially this past year, is the targeting of cyber insurers. There was a well-known article about an interview with a ransomware actor that actually said that they intentionally target cyber insurers just to grab their customer list and to see what they're insured against. And that actually turns into what they ask for in money. Now, have we seen that necessarily in action against our members? Not necessarily, but it was interesting that they made those claims as well. Next slide, please. And we'll try to break it down into impact, maybe what your fellow peers have seen. So some financial institutions, for instance, on ransomware have not been immune to it. You know, they have shown up in some of these leak sites. They have shown up in publicly in news, or maybe in regulatory reporting as well, of having suffered a ransomware attack. So we're not immune. If you do look at the different sectors and how they're impacted, we're probably a little bit better than most, but keep in mind that our third parties can also be attacked by ransomware, and this can actually lead to a supply chain risk for you, or some other types of data integrity risks, depending on what your relationship is with that third party. So this is why we also look at potential suppliers or providers to the finance sector as well, and report on them when we can, and even if we can, get the information direct from them so that you know what's going on. Next slide. And we'll go into that a little bit more in these types of briefs too, to try to really kind of hone down on the impact to you right before you get into this cyber range exercise, and to kind of understand a little bit more of the threat. Again, you know, this is more for general purposes. If you do want more information about these individual incidents, just let us know offline and we'll get you more information.